Mark was a single dad, and every morning he woke up to the same routine. He would make breakfast for his little daughter, Lily, help her get ready for school, and then rush off to his part-time job at the community center. Life wasn't easy, but Mark didn't complain. He loved his daughter more than anything, and he wanted to give her a happy and safe life. He didn't need fancy things or recognition. He just wanted to make sure Lily grew up feeling loved and supported. On this particular morning, the sun had just started to peek through the clouds, casting a soft glow across the quiet town. Mark walked hand in hand with Lily as they made their way to the community center. She was chatting happily about a drawing she had made in school, and Mark smiled, listening to every word. He loved how innocent and full of life she was. Even on days when work was stressful, her laughter and energy could make him forget about everything else. When they arrived at the community center, the usual bustle was already beginning. Volunteers were setting up tables, chairs, and decorations for the music recital that was planned later that day. Mark's job wasn't glamorous, mostly cleaning, organizing, and helping wherever he was needed, but he didn't mind. He liked being useful, and he liked the quiet satisfaction of knowing that things were running smoothly. He pushed a broom across the polished wooden floor, watching as dust and crumbs disappeared under the bristles. Sometimes he would hum softly to himself, a tune he had played on the piano many years ago. Music had always been a part of his life, though he had never pursued it professionally. Life had its way of changing plans, and raising Lily had become his main focus. Still, the piano in the corner of the room called to him whenever he had a moment. Its polished black surface gleamed, almost as if it were waiting for someone to play it again. Lily ran ahead, skipping and laughing as she explored the center. Volunteers waved at her, some smiling at her energy, others shaking their heads with amusement. She was a bright little girl, curious and fearless. Mark couldn't help but watch her with pride, remembering how she had changed his life the moment she was born. She was his reason for everything, the light that guided him through long, tiring days. As he continued tidying the stage, he noticed the small details that others often overlooked. A chair slightly off to the side, a music stand that needed straightening, a stack of programs that should be aligned neatly. Mark liked order. It gave him a sense of control in a world that often felt unpredictable. He carefully adjusted each item, making sure everything was perfect for the performers who would take the stage later. He never imagined that he himself would ever be up there, in front of an audience. Around him, volunteers were rushing about, talking to each other, checking schedules and setting up instruments. Mark liked observing people without being noticed. He could see the little things that made them human, the nervous tap of a foot, the quick glance at a phone, the hurried sip of coffee to calm nerves. It made him feel connected, even if he stayed mostly in the background. He had learned early on that sometimes the most important work was done quietly, without recognition. By mid-morning, more performers began to arrive. Children with shiny violins, teenagers with guitars, and a few adults with instruments of all kinds. There was excitement in the air, a buzz that Mark felt even as he swept the floor. He smiled at the thought of Lily possibly performing someday. She was only 6, but she already had a love for music, often banging on the little keyboard she had at home, trying to make her own melodies. He encouraged her, knowing how important it was to let her explore her passions. One of the volunteers, a kind older woman named Mrs. Thompson, approached him. "Thank you for helping, Mark," she said warmly. "You always keep things in order. I don't know what we'd do without you." Mark shrugged modestly. "It's nothing," he replied. "I just like to make sure everything is ready." Mrs. Thompson smiled and patted his shoulder before moving on. Mark returned to tidying, focusing on the stage. He ran his hand over the piano keys absent-mindedly, feeling the smoothness beneath his fingers. It had been years since he had played in front of anyone, but the memories came flooding back. The rhythm, the flow, the way music could make words unnecessary. He shook his head, smiling to himself. Today wasn't about him. Today was about helping others. Lily came back, tugging at his hand. "Daddy, can I look at the piano?" she asked, her eyes sparkling. "Of course," Mark said, kneeling down beside her. But just look, okay? No playing yet. She nodded eagerly and ran her small fingers along the keys, pressing a few notes and giggling at the sounds. Mark watched her, feeling a swell of pride and joy. Music was a gift, and even a small touch could light up her imagination. As the morning went on, Mark continued his work, moving from one task to another. He cleaned the dust from the instruments, arranged chairs for the audience, and even helped a few nervous performers calm their jitters. He did it all without seeking attention, content to remain in the background. Yet, there was something about the piano that kept calling to him, a quiet whisper in the back of his mind reminding him of the joy it had once brought him. By lunchtime, the center was almost ready. Mark wiped his brow, feeling a sense of accomplishment. The stage looked perfect, the chairs were aligned, and the instruments were set. Volunteers were chatting and laughing, excited for the recital to begin. Mark sat down for a brief moment, letting Lily climb onto his lap. She rested her head against his chest, tired from running around but still full of life. "You're the best, Daddy," she whispered. Mark hugged her tightly, feeling a warmth in his heart. "And you're the best too, kiddo," he replied. He looked at the piano one last time before they went to get some lunch. He didn't know it yet, but this ordinary day, filled with simple tasks and quiet moments, was about to change in a way neither he nor anyone else could have expected. The stage he had been tidying for hours would soon become the place where his hidden talent would shine, and where the audience would be left speechless by a performance that came from the heart. For now, though, it was just another morning, filled with love, care, and small acts of dedication that made life meaningful. After lunch, the community center grew even busier. Children and adults arrived, carrying instruments, music sheets, and nervous excitement. Mark moved quietly among them, helping wherever he could. He adjusted a few chairs, straightened music stands, and even helped a young girl tune her violin. He didn't seek praise. He simply liked being part of the preparations. He noticed how some of the performers were jittery, shifting their feet or tapping fingers against their instruments. It reminded him of himself years ago when he first learned the piano. The anxiety of performing, the fear of mistakes. It was something every musician understood. Mark offered small reassurances when he could. "You'll do great," he'd say with a smile. Sometimes that was all it took to calm someone's nerves. While he tidied, he kept an eye on Lily. She was fascinated by everything happening, her small eyes wide as she watched the performers. She tugged on his sleeve, pointing at a boy with a guitar. "Daddy, look, can I try that someday?" she asked eagerly. Mark smiled and nodded. "Of course, kiddo. You can try anything you want." He had always encouraged her curiosity, believing it was the best way for her to learn and grow. As the recital drew closer, a small panic spread among the organizers. One of the scheduled pianists hadn't arrived. The coordinator, a kind but frazzled woman, looked around helplessly. "What are we going to do?" she muttered. The piano sat in the corner of the stage, gleaming and untouched. It had been waiting all day, but now it seemed as if it were the only solution. A volunteer, trying to lighten the tension, joked, "Maybe Mark can play. He's been around the piano all morning, cleaning it. Maybe he knows a thing or two." Laughter rippled through the room, but the coordinator's eyes lingered on Mark. He was still straightening chairs and had not been paying attention. Mark heard his name and turned, a little confused. "Me?" he asked softly. The room quieted, and several eyes focused on him. The coordinator approached, looking both hopeful and apologetic. "We're in a bit of a bind. The pianist hasn't shown up. Do you think you could play something? Just for a short piece?" Mark's heart skipped a beat. He had not played in front of an audience in years, not since before Lily was born. His hands itched, remembering the feel of the keys, the flow of music that had once been second nature. But doubt immediately crept in. He was just a janitor, not a performer. The thought of everyone watching him, expecting perfection, made his stomach twist. Lily, sensing his hesitation, tugged at his sleeve. "Daddy, you can do it," she whispered, her eyes shining with excitement and trust. Mark looked at her and felt a wave of courage. She believed in him, and that belief alone was enough to make him consider it. He swallowed hard and nodded slowly. "All right, I'll do it," he said. The room murmured with surprise. Some volunteers were shocked, some impressed, and a few exchanged skeptical glances. They had never known Mark to perform, and the idea that the man who had been quietly tidying the stage all morning could suddenly step into the spotlight seemed almost impossible. Mark walked toward the piano, feeling a mixture of nerves and anticipation. Each step echoed slightly in the room, and he could hear the soft shuffling of feet and whispered conversations. He glanced at Lily, who gave him a reassuring smile and a thumbs up. That small gesture bolstered his confidence. He sat down at the piano bench, his hands hovering over the keys. It had been years, but he remembered the basic chords, the scales, the flow of his favorite pieces. The audience waited in a tense silence. Some parents shifted their children closer to see what was happening. The organizers held their breath. Mark took a deep breath himself, letting the calmness of the moment wash over him. Then he pressed the first key. The note rang out clearly, pure and steady. The room fell completely silent. Mark's fingers moved with growing confidence, each note flowing into the next. He chose a piece he knew well, a simple but emotional melody that had always spoken to him. His heart guided his hands as much as his memory did. At first, a few people exchanged surprised glances. They hadn't expected the quiet janitor to produce such beautiful music. Slowly, the murmurs of doubt faded, replaced by an almost tangible sense of wonder. The music filled the room, soft yet powerful, carrying a depth of emotion that touched everyone who heard it. Mark closed his eyes, letting the music take over. He didn't notice the audience anymore, didn't think about mistakes or judgment. It was just him, the piano, and the notes flowing from his fingers. Each chord seemed to tell a story of love, sacrifice, and hope. The melody wove through the room, wrapping around the listeners and holding them in rapt attention. Lily sat close, mesmerized by the sounds. She had never seen her father like this, so confident, so alive in a way that had nothing to do with chores or work. She felt proud and amazed, realizing that her father had a hidden side, a talent that had been there all along. The performance continued, and the audience grew more captivated with each passing moment. Parents and children alike leaned forward, eyes wide, some even closing their eyes to fully absorb the music. The simple act of tidying the stage had led to this unexpected moment, a transformation from an ordinary day to something magical. Mark's confidence grew with every note. The music was flowing naturally now, as if it had never left him. The audience's initial surprise had turned into admiration and awe. People began to realize that this was no casual performance. It was the work of someone who had lived with music in his heart for years, even if it had remained hidden until now. By the time he reached the end of the piece, the room was completely silent for a brief moment, as if everyone needed to catch their breath. Then, slowly, the applause began. It started as a ripple and grew into a wave, filling the entire community center. Some people stood, clapping enthusiastically, while others wiped away tears of surprise and joy. Mark opened his eyes and looked at the crowd. The faces that had been skeptical, curious, and anxious were now filled with amazement and admiration. He looked down at Lily, who was clapping with all her might, her face glowing with pride. The coordinator approached, her eyes shining. "Mark, that was incredible. I had no idea you could play like that," she exclaimed. Mark smiled humbly. "I've played a little, that's all," he said softly, trying to downplay it. But inside, he felt a warmth and pride he hadn't experienced in years. The rest of the volunteers and performers came over, praising him, shaking his hand, and asking how he had learned to play so beautifully. Mark laughed nervously, explaining that it had been a long time since he had played publicly. The attention was overwhelming, but it felt good. For the first time in a long while, he realized that his talents, even hidden ones, could make a difference and inspire others. The afternoon continued with other performances, but something had changed. People now looked at Mark differently, not just as the helpful single dad who tidied the stage, but as someone with a gift, someone who had shared a piece of himself with the world in a truly unforgettable way. Lily stayed close, beaming at her father. She knew that this was a moment she would never forget, and neither would he. The day had started like any other, with chores and preparation, but it had turned into something magical, showing that sometimes the most extraordinary moments come when we least expect them. And for Mark, it was just the beginning. The experience reminded him that life could surprise him in the best ways, that his love for music had not faded, and that sharing it could bring joy not only to himself and his daughter, but to everyone around him. As the applause settled from Mark's first few notes, the audience felt a quiet stillness, like everyone was holding their breath. There was something different about the way he played, a kind of gentle power that drew people in without being loud or flashy. Mark sat at the piano, his eyes closed, letting the music flow naturally from his fingers. Each note was deliberate, filled with emotion, and it seemed to tell a story of its own. He had chosen a piece that was both simple and beautiful, one that he had played countless times in the past, but now it carried more meaning. The room was filled with the soft resonance of the piano, and people leaned forward, captivated by the unexpected beauty. Parents exchanged glances, whispering quietly to one another, amazed that someone they had seen cleaning the stage could possess such talent. Lily watched from the front row, her small hands gripping her father's coat. She had never seen him like this before. Every note he played seemed to carry a part of his soul, a depth of feeling that words could never express. She felt proud and almost protective of him, realizing that the man who always cared for her so quietly had a whole world inside him that few people knew about. Mark's fingers danced across the keys with a fluidity that came from years of practice, even if he hadn't performed publicly in a long time. The music rose and fell, sometimes soft and gentle, other times stronger and more passionate. The audience was silent, completely absorbed in the sound. Some closed their eyes, letting the melody wash over them. Others simply stared in awe, unable to look away from the scene unfolding in front of them. A few children whispered to each other, amazed that someone who seemed so ordinary could play so beautifully. One boy nudged his sister and said softly, "Wow, he's really good." The sister nodded, her eyes wide, and they both leaned closer to the piano, as if trying to catch every note in its entirety. Mark felt a connection with the audience, even without looking at them. The music bridged the gap between him and the room, creating a shared moment of emotion and wonder. It reminded him why he had loved playing piano in the first place. Not for fame or recognition, but for the way it could touch people, bring them together, and express feelings that were too deep for words. Every chord he struck seemed to echo his own life, the struggles, joys, and quiet moments that had defined him as a single father. He thought of Lily, of the countless nights he had stayed up helping her with homework, of the mornings he had rushed to get her ready for school. This music was for her, a gift from his heart to hers, and now it was also a gift to everyone who could hear it. He shifted to a slightly faster part of the piece, his hands moving confidently over the keys. The sound filled the room with warmth, drawing smiles and quiet gasps from the audience. A mother sitting near the front reached out to gently hold her child's hand, sharing the moment together. Even the volunteers, who had been busy setting up and organizing, stopped what they were doing to listen, mesmerized by the unfolding performance. Mark's focus remained entirely on the music. He didn't notice the expressions of surprise and admiration on the faces around him, nor did he think about the fact that he had become the center of attention. He was lost in the rhythm, in the emotions that each note carried. It was a rare moment of pure presence, where the world outside the piano seemed to disappear. Occasionally, he would glance at Lily, catching her wide-eyed gaze. Her excitement and pride fueled him, giving him the courage to pour even more emotion into his playing. She clapped softly along with the rhythm, her enthusiasm contagious. Mark smiled briefly at her, feeling a surge of love and determination. He wanted to show her that passion and talent could exist in ordinary people, that dedication and love could create something truly beautiful. The melody reached its peak, a crescendo that filled the room with a powerful and moving sound. The audience was silent, completely taken in by the experience. Mark's hands moved effortlessly, guided by instinct and memory. The music spoke of hope, of love, of resilience, the very things that had kept him going through the challenges of single parenthood. As he began to slow the piece down, returning to a soft and gentle ending, he noticed a few people wiping tears from their eyes. The emotions the music had stirred were evident on every face. Even those who had come simply to attend the recital were touched deeply, realizing that talent and passion could be found in the most unexpected places. The final note lingered in the air, vibrating softly and leaving a sense of calm and satisfaction. For a moment, there was complete silence, as if the audience was collectively absorbing the beauty they had just witnessed. Then, slowly, the room erupted into applause. The sound was overwhelming, filling every corner of the community center. People stood, clapping enthusiastically, some cheering and calling out words of praise. Mark opened his eyes and looked up at the crowd. Faces that had been skeptical, curious, or distracted were now filled with admiration and joy. He caught sight of Lily, clapping and beaming with pride. Her excitement and love radiated toward him, making his heart swell with happiness. The coordinator rushed over, her face glowing with amazement. "Mark, that was extraordinary," she exclaimed. "I can't believe you kept this talent hidden for so long." Mark chuckled softly, brushing off the praise. "I've played a little here and there, that's all," he said modestly. But deep down, he felt a new confidence growing. He realized that the joy of sharing his music could have a lasting impact, not just on himself or Lily, but on everyone who had listened. People approached him, shaking his hand, complimenting his performance, and asking about his musical background. Mark answered each question with humility, explaining that he had learned to play years ago and that he simply loved music. The attention was overwhelming, but it was also heartwarming. For the first time in a long while, he felt seen, not just as a hard-working single dad, but as someone with talent, depth, and passion. Lily stayed close, her small hands holding his coat. She whispered, "Daddy, you were amazing." Mark hugged her tightly, feeling a warmth that spread through his entire body. This was more than a performance. It was a moment of connection, a bridge between his love for music, his devotion to his daughter, and the audience who had experienced something unexpected and beautiful. As the other performers prepared to take the stage, Mark sat quietly, letting the excitement settle. He realized that this moment, born from a simple act of tidying the stage, had transformed the day. He had stepped into the spotlight, shared a piece of his heart, and left a lasting impression on everyone present. The rest of the recital continued, but something had changed. People now looked at Mark with new respect and admiration. They whispered to one another, sharing their astonishment at his unexpected talent. Even the young performers seemed inspired, seeing that skill and passion could come from the most ordinary of people. Mark watched Lily, her face glowing with happiness. He knew this was a memory they would cherish forever, a story she would tell when she was older about the day her dad surprised everyone with his hidden talent. It was a reminder that life could bring unexpected opportunities, that courage and love could shine through in ways no one anticipated, and that even ordinary people could create extraordinary moments when they embraced their true abilities. As Mark continued to play, the atmosphere in the community center began to shift. What had started as curiosity and mild amusement transformed into complete captivation. Every note he struck seemed to fill not just the room, but the hearts of everyone present. It was as though the music reached beyond sound, touching emotions that had been lying quietly beneath the surface. People found themselves leaning forward, unable to tear their eyes away from the piano or the man whose hands seemed to dance effortlessly across it. Mark had closed his eyes, allowing the music to guide him entirely. Each chord he pressed carried intention and meaning, as if he were telling a story without words. The story was not just his own. It was the story of anyone who had struggled, who had loved deeply, who had faced life with courage and vulnerability. Parents felt it in the memories of their children. Teachers felt it in the lessons they had imparted. And even strangers felt it in the recognition of shared human experience. Lily sat quietly, watching her father with wide eyes, her small hands clasped together in awe. She had always known her father cared deeply, but seeing him like this, giving something so personal and beautiful to others, made her heart swell. She felt proud in a way words could not describe, knowing that this quiet, loving man who had always been there for her had a hidden brilliance that now touched everyone around them. The music swelled and softened, rising and falling like waves on a calm but powerful sea. Mark's fingers moved with precision and feeling, creating a tapestry of sound that was impossible to ignore. The audience was silent, caught in the spell of the moment. Some had their eyes closed, letting the music wash over them. Others stared intently, marveling at the skill and emotion that seemed to radiate from him effortlessly. A mother sitting near the front gently squeezed her child's hand, feeling tears prick her eyes. She whispered, "He's amazing, isn't he?" Her child nodded quietly, equally mesmerized. Around them, others exchanged similar looks of wonder, silently acknowledging that they were witnessing something rare and extraordinary. Mark shifted into a slightly more complex section of the piece. The tempo quickened, but his fingers flew across the keys with grace, never faltering. Each note was deliberate, each pause meaningful. The energy in the room grew, but it was not chaotic. It was alive with emotion, full of respect and admiration. People who had come simply to attend a recital were now experiencing a performance that went far beyond their expectations. He thought of Lily, of all the times he had stayed up late helping her with homework or soothing her nightmares. He thought of the many small, unnoticed acts of care he had given over the years. Each note he played carried a piece of that love, a reflection of the countless moments that had shaped his life. The audience could sense it. They felt the sincerity, the heart behind every sound. A few volunteers, who had been bustling about in preparation, now stood silently, mesmerized. They had always known Mark as the quiet, hard-working man who kept things running smoothly, but they had never imagined this side of him. His talent and passion had always been there, hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to emerge. Now that moment had arrived, and it left them both astonished and deeply moved. The piece continued, its melody building and intertwining in ways that seemed to defy simplicity. Mark's hands moved faster, yet with control, producing harmonies that created a sense of soaring emotion. The room felt alive with the music, and people could almost feel it vibrating through their bodies. Some were holding back tears, while others smiled softly, caught in the beauty of the moment. Lily leaned forward slightly, her eyes never leaving her father. She felt a connection not only to him but to the room as a whole. The music seemed to unite everyone present, bridging gaps between strangers, connecting hearts through shared emotion. She realized that her father's music was more than sound. It was a language of love, hope, and resilience. Mark's focus remained unwavering. He did not glance at the audience or seek approval. His attention was entirely on the piano and the music flowing through him. Yet, he could feel the energy in the room, the way people leaned in, the collective breath held in anticipation of the next note. It was as if the room itself had become an instrument, resonating with his performance. As he moved into the final section of the piece, the music became softer, more intimate. The rapid notes slowed into gentle chords, each one ringing with clarity and emotion. The crescendo had passed, and now there was a sense of reflection and calm. The audience felt it too, as if the music had taken them on a journey and now allowed them to rest in its gentle embrace. The final notes lingered, vibrating softly in the air. Mark's hands rested lightly on the keys, and for a brief moment, there was complete silence. The room seemed to hold its breath, savoring the conclusion of the performance. Then, slowly, applause began, hesitant at first, and then growing into a wave of sound that filled the entire center. People stood, clapping and cheering, some with tears in their eyes, others smiling broadly, all moved by what they had just experienced. Mark opened his eyes and looked at the crowd. Faces that had been skeptical or indifferent were now filled with admiration and awe. The room buzzed with excitement, conversations overlapping as people discussed the unexpected brilliance they had just witnessed. Even those who had come with low expectations were now talking about how incredible the performance had been. Lily jumped up, clapping her hands enthusiastically, her face glowing with pride. She ran to her father, wrapping her small arms around him. "Daddy, that was amazing! Everyone loved it!" she exclaimed, her voice filled with joy. Mark hugged her tightly, feeling warmth spread through him. This was more than just a performance. It was a moment of connection, a demonstration of love, talent, and courage. The coordinator approached, her eyes shining with gratitude and amazement. "Mark, you have no idea how much this means to everyone here," she said. "You've turned a small recital into something unforgettable. Thank you." Mark smiled, feeling a quiet pride. He had not sought recognition, but the impact of his music was undeniable. He realized that sharing his gift, even in an unexpected way, had touched lives far beyond what he had imagined. People continued to approach him, praising his performance and asking how he had developed such talent. Mark explained modestly that he had played for many years, mostly privately, but he had never performed publicly. The compliments were overwhelming, but he accepted them with humility, knowing that the true reward was seeing the joy and wonder on the faces of the audience, especially Lily's. The rest of the day unfolded with other performances, but the memory of Mark's music lingered in the room. People carried the emotions with them, inspired and touched by the unexpected beauty they had witnessed. Mark stayed close to Lily, watching her interact with friends and volunteers, realizing that this day would remain a cherished memory for both of them. As the recital came to an end and the audience began to leave, Mark felt a quiet satisfaction. He had stepped into the spotlight, shared a piece of himself, and connected with people in a way he had never imagined possible. The music had done more than entertain. It had inspired, healed, and united. He looked at Lily and smiled, knowing that the experience had left an indelible mark on her as well. This day, born from simple acts of care and quiet dedication, had transformed into something truly extraordinary, reminding him and everyone present that the most remarkable moments often arise from the most unexpected places. After the recital ended, the community center slowly began to empty, but the impact of Mark's performance lingered in the air. Volunteers and parents were still talking in hushed tones about the man who had quietly tidied the stage all morning and then stunned everyone with his piano playing. Some were laughing with disbelief, while others shook their heads in awe. Mark helped gather chairs and instruments, moving quietly among the crowd, but every so often, someone would stop him, praising his performance or asking questions about his musical background. Mark's heart was full. He didn't seek attention, but it was hard not to feel the warmth of appreciation surrounding him. He glanced at Lily, who was holding his hand tightly, her eyes still shining from excitement. She whispered, "Daddy, everyone loved you." Mark smiled, squeezing her hand. He felt proud, not because of the applause, but because he had shared something personal and meaningful. He had stepped out of his comfort zone and given others a gift from his heart. A few of the organizers approached him, speaking quickly and excitedly. "We had no idea you could play like that," one said. "You should consider performing again. People would love it." Mark chuckled, shaking his head. "I'm just a dad," he said humbly. "I play because I love it, not for recognition." But even as he said this, he felt a small spark of curiosity. Could this be more than just a one-time moment? The thought was fleeting, but it lingered in the back of his mind. He had spent so long caring for others, focusing on Lily and his daily responsibilities, that he had rarely considered what his own passions could bring to the world. Now, for the first time in years, he wondered what might happen if he allowed himself to explore that side of his life again. Lily ran ahead to greet a few children she had met during the recital. She laughed and shared her excitement about her father's performance. Parents smiled at her, impressed by her enthusiasm and pride. Seeing his daughter so happy and confident warmed Mark's heart. He realized that this experience had given her more than just entertainment. It had shown her that people could surprise us, that hidden talents could shine when given a chance, and that courage could lead to beautiful moments. As the day went on, Mark received more attention than he was used to. A few people asked for his contact information, curious about the possibility of him playing at other community events. He felt flattered but also a little overwhelmed. His life was busy, and he had always prioritized Lily above all else. Yet, there was a part of him that felt alive in a way it hadn't for a long time. The joy of playing, the connection with an audience, and the shared emotion created something unforgettable. During a quiet moment, he sat on a bench near the stage, reflecting on the day. The piano sat silently, polished and ready for the next use, but now it seemed to hold a new significance. It wasn't just an instrument. It was a bridge between him and the people he had touched through music. He thought about the faces of the audience, the awe in their eyes, and the genuine admiration he had seen. It was humbling and inspiring all at once. Lily climbed onto his lap, still buzzing with energy. "Daddy, can we come back tomorrow and play again?" she asked eagerly. Mark laughed softly, hugging her close. "Maybe not tomorrow," he said, "but we can come back soon. And maybe someday we'll play together." The thought of sharing music with her filled him with warmth and hope. It was a reminder that the smallest moments of love and encouragement could grow into something extraordinary. As the volunteers packed up the last of the equipment, several people came forward to express their gratitude once more. A woman who had been sitting near the front spoke softly. "Thank you for sharing your music today. It was more than beautiful. It was moving. You reminded us all of what really matters." Mark nodded, feeling the sincerity in her words. It was a reminder that music, like any art, could reach beyond entertainment and touch the deepest parts of the human heart. By the time the center was empty, Mark and Lily were walking home, hand in hand. The sun was beginning to set, casting a golden glow across the streets. Lily skipped ahead, glancing back to make sure her father was following, and Mark smiled at the simplicity and beauty of the moment. Life, he realized, was made up of these small, meaningful experiences, and today had been one of the most extraordinary. That evening, as Lily prepared for bed, she couldn't stop talking about the day. She described every detail: the applause, the surprised faces, the way her father's music made her feel. Mark listened, smiling, proud of her enthusiasm and joy. He tucked her in, kissed her forehead, and whispered that he loved her. She smiled sleepily, her eyes closing, and he felt a deep sense of contentment. After Lily fell asleep, Mark sat quietly in the living room, reflecting on the events of the day. He realized that the performance had not only touched the audience but had also changed something within him. He had been reminded of his own abilities, the passions he had set aside, and the joy that could come from sharing them. It was a gentle nudge, a signal that life could still hold unexpected surprises and opportunities for growth, even amidst the routines and responsibilities of daily life. Over the next few days, the story of Mark's performance spread quietly through the community. People who had attended the recital shared their experience with friends and neighbors, talking about the single dad who had been tidying the stage and then amazed everyone with his piano skills. Messages arrived at the community center, thanking him and expressing admiration. Mark remained humble, grateful for the kind words but never seeking the spotlight. Despite the attention, Mark continued his routine, balancing work, chores, and spending time with Lily. Yet, he found himself thinking more about music than he had in years. He started practicing again in the evenings after Lily went to bed, his fingers moving over the keys with ease and familiarity. The piano became a place of reflection and creativity, a quiet escape where he could express himself and reconnect with a part of his soul he had neglected. Lily noticed the change, her excitement growing as she saw her father rediscovering something he loved. She began joining him, pressing keys and experimenting with sounds, laughing when unexpected notes rang out. Together, they explored melodies, creating a shared world of music and imagination. It became a bonding experience, one that strengthened their connection and filled their home with warmth and joy. Mark also started thinking about how he could share his music with others again. He didn't want fame or recognition. He simply wanted to create moments that could touch people's hearts. He considered volunteering to play at other community events, offering to help with recitals, and even mentoring young children who had an interest in music. The possibilities felt exciting and new, a reminder that life could offer opportunities for growth and connection at any stage. As the days passed, Mark realized that his life had shifted in a subtle but profound way. The experience of performing, of touching the audience with his music, had reminded him that even ordinary moments could lead to extraordinary outcomes. It reinforced the idea that hidden talents and passions were worth exploring, and that sometimes, stepping out of one's comfort zone could create memories and experiences that would last a lifetime. Every time he glanced at the piano, Mark felt a sense of anticipation and gratitude. It was no longer just an instrument in the corner of a room. It was a source of joy, a bridge to others, and a reminder of what was possible when courage, love, and dedication came together. He knew that his life as a single dad would always be busy and full of responsibilities. But now he understood that there was room for passion and creativity alongside duty. One afternoon, while Mark was practicing, Lily ran into the room with a notebook full of scribbled notes. "Daddy, I wrote a song for you," she exclaimed. Mark laughed, delighted by her enthusiasm, and encouraged her to play it on the piano. Together, they worked through the notes, laughing at mistakes and celebrating small successes. It was a simple activity, yet it brought them closer than ever before. In the evenings, Mark reflected on the reactions of the audience during the recital. He realized that people didn't just respond to the music. They responded to the authenticity, the emotion, and the courage it took to share something personal. That lesson stayed with him, influencing how he approached both music and life. It reminded him that honesty and passion could have a powerful impact, even in the most unexpected circumstances. Mark's story continued quietly within the community. People who had witnessed the recital spoke about it with excitement, sharing the tale of the single dad who transformed a routine day into a memorable event with talent and heart. Yet for Mark, the true reward was not the recognition but the joy of reconnecting with music, of inspiring his daughter, and of realizing that ordinary life could hold moments of extraordinary beauty. Weeks had passed since the recital, but the memory of Mark's performance lingered both in his heart and in the minds of those who had witnessed it. He had returned to his usual routine of work, caring for Lily, and managing their small household. Yet something inside him had shifted. There was a quiet confidence now, a sense of possibility that had not been there before. He knew that life could still surprise him, that even the ordinary days could hold moments of wonder and meaning. Mark had resumed practicing piano in the evenings, letting the music fill their home. Lily loved joining him, tapping on the keys, and experimenting with melodies. Their living room became a place of laughter, creativity, and exploration. These moments were simple, yet they held a deep joy that neither had expected. The bond between father and daughter had strengthened, intertwined with the shared language of music. One afternoon, Mark received a call from the community center. The organizer's voice was warm and enthusiastic. "Mark, we're planning another recital, and we'd love for you to perform again. People are still talking about your last performance. Would you consider playing?" Mark hesitated for a moment. He wasn't seeking fame, yet the idea of bringing joy to others again was compelling. He thought of Lily and smiled. "Yes, I'll do it," he said. The excitement in her voice on the other end of the line made the decision feel right. Preparation for the new recital brought a mix of nerves and excitement. Mark practiced more deliberately this time, exploring new pieces and experimenting with expression. He remembered how the audience had responded the first time, not just to the music, but to the honesty and heart behind it. He wanted this performance to feel equally meaningful. Lily joined him in his practice sessions, offering encouragement, and sometimes even suggesting notes and rhythms. Her enthusiasm reminded him that music was as much about joy as it was about skill. The day of the recital arrived, and Mark could feel the energy buzzing in the air. He and Lily arrived early, helping set up chairs and instruments, much like he had before. The community center was bustling with performers and families, all eager to enjoy the show. Yet this time, there was a sense of anticipation surrounding him that was different from before. People remembered him. They had stories to tell about the man who had transformed a routine recital into something extraordinary. When it was Mark's turn to perform, he walked to the piano with a calm confidence. Lily held his hand briefly, giving him a reassuring squeeze before stepping back to watch. The audience greeted him with smiles and quiet applause, reflecting a mix of familiarity and excitement. Mark sat at the piano, took a deep breath, and allowed his fingers to find the keys. The music began softly, flowing naturally from memory and feeling. He chose a piece that had been meaningful to him throughout the weeks of practice. The notes carried warmth, hope, and a gentle power that immediately drew in the audience. Faces turned toward him, eyes wide, and for a moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. As the melody unfolded, Mark could feel a connection forming. It was more than just music. It was an expression of his life, his love for Lily, and his newfound confidence. The audience responded in kind, leaning in, closing their eyes, and letting the sound carry them into its emotional depths. Children and adults alike were captivated, some swaying slightly to the rhythm, others quietly absorbing every chord. Lily watched her father with wonder. She could see the dedication in his hands, the emotion in every note, and she felt a deep pride. This performance was different from the first. It was not a surprise, but a celebration. It was proof that sometimes, the courage to share a hidden talent could blossom into something lasting, something that could inspire and touch others repeatedly. The piece grew stronger, with harmonies intertwining and notes soaring. Mark's focus was absolute. He did not glance at the audience or the reactions around him. He allowed the music to guide him entirely. Each phrase carried meaning. Each chord resonated with life's challenges and joys. It was as if every small struggle, every quiet moment of care for Lily, and every sacrifice he had made had led to this expression. As he approached the final section, the music softened again, gentle and reflective. The room seemed suspended in a quiet reverence, as if everyone was collectively absorbing the experience. Mark's fingers moved with grace, each note lingering just long enough to leave a lasting impression. The final chord rang out, holding the room in a brief silence before applause erupted. The audience rose to their feet, clapping and cheering with enthusiasm. Smiles and tears appeared across faces, and for a moment, it felt as if time had paused. People came forward to shake his hand, to express admiration, and to thank him for sharing something so meaningful. Mark accepted the compliments with humility, feeling the warmth of human connection and the impact of his gift. Lily ran to him as soon as the applause subsided, wrapping her arms around him. "Daddy, that was perfect. Everyone loved you again," she exclaimed. Mark hugged her, feeling a sense of fulfillment that went beyond performance. He realized that the true reward was not recognition or praise, but the joy of touching hearts, inspiring others, and sharing a meaningful experience with his daughter. Over the following weeks, Mark's confidence in his abilities grew. He continued practicing and occasionally performed at small events in the community. Each performance was a chance to connect, to share, and to inspire, but he remained grounded, balancing music with his responsibilities as a father. Lily remained his constant companion, learning and laughing alongside him, discovering the beauty of music as both art and connection. Mark began mentoring a few young children who were interested in piano. He shared his knowledge and passion without expecting anything in return, focusing on helping them find their own voices. Watching the children learn and express themselves reminded him of the joy and fulfillment that music could bring. It was a way to give back, to nurture talent, and to strengthen the sense of community. One day, as Mark and Lily practiced together at home, he reflected on the journey that had begun with a simple act of tidying the stage. That ordinary morning had turned into an extraordinary experience, revealing hidden talent, inspiring others, and transforming the way he saw himself. He realized that life was full of surprises and that courage, even in small moments, could lead to profound outcomes. The community continued to speak of Mark's performances, and though he never sought fame, his story became a quiet inspiration. People admired his humility, dedication, and the way he shared his talent for the joy it could bring. He had shown that ordinary people could create extraordinary moments when they embraced their passions and shared them authentically. Lily grew more confident and curious about music, exploring her own creativity with encouragement from her father. Their home became a space of discovery, where each note played was a small celebration of life, love, and family. Mark found a balance between duty and passion, understanding that nurturing talent and sharing joy could coexist with responsibility and care. As time went on, Mark continued to play, to teach, and to inspire both his daughter and the community around him. His journey had begun unexpectedly, with a simple act of tidying the stage, but it had revealed a deeper truth, that life could surprise us with opportunities to shine, to connect, and to create moments of lasting impact. Through music, love, and courage, Mark had not only discovered his own potential, but had also shown others that even ordinary people could leave extraordinary impressions on the world.